She's the voice behind the viral comedy, bold commentary, and truth-packed interviews that cut through the chaos. Author, brand creator, proud conservative Christian, this is Elsa Kurt. Welcome to the show that always brings bold faith, real truth, and no apologies.
Well, hello, everyone. It's Elsa Kurt, and I have a wonderful guest today. This is Robert Bliss sitting next to me. He is a Marine Vietnam veteran. So that automatically, I have to stop right there and say thank you for your service. I am the wife of a Marine, so you are already near and dear to my heart. And not only that, you are a pretty illustrious guy. You're a decorated U.S. Marine Corps Vietnam veteran, as well as a poet, an editor, a photographer, and my other favorite thing, a patriot. So I think you and I are going to get along famously over here. So today we're going to be talking about your poetry and, of course, your books. So first and foremost, thank you for joining me. How are you today?
I'm very well. And to your husband, I say Semper Fidelis, as all Marines do. This is my current book. I have a new one coming out.
It is absolutely gorgeous. I love that cover. And
I designed it.
You designed it yourself. That's so beautiful. Where is that the Catskills? I know we're going to be talking a little bit about that, but is it?
Yes. Yeah. I love it up in the Catskills. Beautiful country. I've always liked the country.
Yeah, me too. I'm a nature geek. I think you're a nature lover as well, obviously,
Yes.
right? Since we're half of our interview is outside, so I'm a little bit envious. If I go outside to do the interview, I can guarantee my neighbor will start mowing his lawn.
Of course.
It's a guarantee.
Law of
I'm
averages,
stuck in the studio.
Yes. Well, that's okay. So I'll enjoy it for both of us.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I want to kind of go through, you're going to take me back if you won't mind, and we're going to work our way through the book process and everything. But I know my viewers and listeners we're going to want some background here. So one thing that you said as part of your bio kind of struck me, and it says that you are a riches to rags story. So tell me a little bit about that, because that's obviously the switch around of what we're used to hearing.
Okay, well, my mother was in show business. She was a piano player, a singer, a dancer with the Bubsby Berkeley Review in the 1930s. Then she went into Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus. My brothers and I got to meet Emmett Kelly, the famous clown. But nonetheless, my mother remarried after Bliss, our father, to Batchelor, who was an airline pilot. And we moved from California to the East Coast because he had to fly out of the East Coast, out of New York. And we had a beautiful home there in Douglaston, Queens, in the woods. But my mother and stepfather were drinking quite a lot, and they got into fights and arguments. One day he just got in the car and took off. From there, it was a steady decline from being well off to becoming at the bottom of it all in Long Beach, Long Island, very, very poor, no supervision. My brothers and I lived under the boardwalk. We had to steal from grocery stores. I hate to say this, but we stole from the poor box at church for money. We devised a way to do it. We stuffed the phones with lollipop wrappers and went by every 3 days on the boardwalk, and with a wire hanger pulled the paper down and all the change would come down. We were surviving. And it's amazing when I look back on that, how we survived. And it was a very difficult time in our lives. There was a lot of abuse by older, not physical abuse, but older men were very aggressive towards us, and we were just children. And so it was a riches to rags story until social services finally captured us because we hid from them and got us into a foster home. And then from the foster home, we were there for a year, which was very bad. Donald and I, my twin brother, my fraternal twin, and I were transferred to the most beautiful place I've ever lived in my life, called the Johnny Andrus Children's Home in 1961. And it was a campus of um, four what they called cottages, but they were big stone buildings, little boys, little girls, big boys, and then down the hill by the dairy barn, the big boys where we went, and there were 20 of us in that building, and it was just beautiful acreage, peacocks walking around, cows, pigs, sheep, uh, chickens. God, I still think about that. In those days, Johnny Andrus, who was a billionaire who built it for children, um, dictated that in those days in 19 well, he started it in the 20s, but you had to be white and you had to be Protestant to get in. We fit the bill and we were very honestly fortunate to get in there. Stayed there till I graduated from high school when I joined the Marines.
Wow. Wow. So you went into the Marines right after high school.
Oh yeah, it was just a continuation of I was I played a lot of football. I was a gymnast. I was on a swimming team, and it was just seemed like a natural progression. I wanted to see if I could cut the mustard with the Marines, and I found out I did. Not only did I cut the mustard down there at Paris Island, I was promoted out of boot camp, and there was only 10 of us out of 90 recruits who were promoted. So I guess I cut the mustard.
Yeah, I guess so. Geez. I'm so struck by the contrast of occurring in your life from, from like you started off with the riches and one particular lifestyle that you started your life in, and then the drastic changes to something so much less than that, and then the another drastic switch into this incredible home with all of these beautiful
Yes.
things, and then the
Yep.
Marines, which is another stark contrast. I mean, the polar opposites that you experienced in such a young age obviously had to shape so much of your perspective, and then of course later in life in your writing. Now, I'm curious, at what point, I would imagine you've been writing for a long time. When did you start writing?
I started in high school. I just
Mm.
picked up this flair. It was a substitute English teacher who, from Hastings on Hudson, Hastings High School, still a really well-known school, uh, who had us all write a short story. And I wrote a Hemingway-esque story, and he liked it so much. He said, Robert, you ought to consider writing. You're good. You're good at it. And it stayed with me, and I started writing poetry. Um, but I wanted to say quickly regarding the the difficulties in our early youth growing up, and those tragic moments. My mother was alcoholic; she was never around. Um, I like to say that Oliver Twist had nothing on me, and it
Mm.
was. I mean, we experienced quite a lot. But yeah, so I began writing in high school, and in fact, two of my favorite poems, even today, Lighthouse and Dreamwind, which are in the Poetry of Bliss book, I wrote in high school.
Nice. Now, was it always poetry for you, or did you do any fiction? Like, what pulled you towards poetry over, say, novels and things like that?
What I found with poetry is that, um, as I discussed with another poet at one point, poetry comes from the soul and you're born with it, and it begins to manifest itself as you become older. And it's a very emotional process. If you're not speaking from your soul and from your heart, you're not writing good poetry. And
Hmm.
I had that capacity, and I don't mind, and I didn't mind expressing emotional discourse through my writing. It suited me. And another thing, I always thought, at first, I thought writing poetry would be easier than writing stories or books or what have you. I found out later on, especially lately, it's not that easy because now I spend a lot of time editing my poetry and to make sure I'm getting the message out that I want to get out. It's a difficult process, but I love it and I do it every
Mhm.
day.
I have to confess that I go to now I'm a author as well, and
Ah,
I write novels and some nonfictions and things like that. However, I go into what I'm going to now call poetry paralysis. I cannot get myself to write poetry. And it's so interesting what you're saying, because I think you may have I think you just gave me therapy here. I think, because I think you're so right. It's poetry is so different because there's so much emotional release in
yes,
poetry, that it's so raw and it's so personal and so real, right? Like you can't slip into, I mean, I guess you could, but you're really putting yourself onto paper, and I commend you for being able to do that, because I would imagine it had to be some form of therapy for you, giving those challenging, and that's probably the understatement, right? To call it challenging circumstances that you were growing up under, and there had to be so much confusion. You're just a child, really, and going through things that, most kids don't have to go through, don't experience. So, um, did you put a lot of that on paper? Is that in your poetry as well?
I don't write so much about my childhood. I have written some things.
Mhm.
I agree with you. Poetry to me is very therapeutic. I'm divorced now 3 years. My wife, well, I won't get into that. She was in the hospital. She's bipolar. Um,
Mm.
and these days, especially now, living alone, to me, I have to get outdoors. I can't sit in my apartment, although I have a lovely cat that I found outdoors here and brought in. But I
Mm.
mean, it's therapy. It
Yeah.
is. And I always and if you have an impasse, if you write anything and you're a poet, especially if you're at a block or an impasse, take a walk in the woods. It'll renew you.
Mm.
That's what I always say. The woods always brings me back, brings me out, takes me to another realm, and I'm able to write again. I really love being outdoors. It just does something to me. I don't know what. Anyway,
I
I
am
know I'm rambling
so
on here.
No, you're not. No, you're speaking to my heart, really, because I like what we started off with, I feel the same way about being outdoors. It's when I'm my most at peace, my most
Yes.
inspired.
Yes.
Just right, like it is almost for us writers, it's even for us writers, it's almost intangible. What the
Absolutely.
effect nature has, and
Yeah.
just even just looking at your background right now, it just brings me peace, so I fully, that's not rambling at all. That's just it's just what it is. I'm not a big fan of that phrase, but it is what it is.
True. It is.
um
It's very true.
Right. Now, talk to me a little bit. So I kind of I started to touch on it, and I veered off on us. Your military experience, your experience in Vietnam. Were you able to? I mean, I guess there obviously is some sense of downtime there. Were you able to write then? Did you feel like writing during that time period? And how different do you feel if you did, what was your writing then?
What I did when I was in Vietnam, up until the point where I was nearly killed, uh, that's another story. I write about that though. Um, I um, I was keeping a journal, a daily journal. I tried to keep in the evening when we would set in the night, dig our fighting holes and dig in, um, and try to relax in the night for the night somewhere. I would write this journal of the day's activities. And I did that for 6 months. And one afternoon, we were uh, fording a stream, and it fell out of I used to keep it under my helmet when I'd go across a stream. and I dropped the helmet, hitting a rock, and it fell into the water. And I was using a magic felt type pen, and all the writing ran, and I lost 6 months of that journal. Oh, it was just devastating to me. I couldn't believe that happened.
Oh,
But
my heart just stopped for you with that because I know the
oh
pain of
God,
that when you pour so much into it, and then then you
and
have that thought process of, do I try and recapture all of that? And how can I possibly, recapture the
impossible.
exact moments, right?
Yeah, mhm.
Oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Me
Oh,
too.
that's so awful. That's,
Yeah,
today's equivalent of that is if your computer crashes while you're
yeah,
you're running and you can't
exactly. Yeah.
recover the files. And I have had that happen. Now, continuing that, if you don't mind, you volunteered for
Mm.
combat. Is that correct?
I was
Oh
writing
my.
for, yeah, I was writing for a commanding officer when I was with the 27th Marines out in California in Camp Pendleton. And I did that for almost a year. And I was getting so bored with it. I used to run the hills in the evening just to stay in shape after duty out there along the beach. And then one morning, top sergeant had us all out there on the company street, and he said, Marines, we need 10 volunteers for Vietnam. So Mr. Stupid raised his hand. I was 18 years old, naive, no idea of what I was getting into. I thought initially my thought was this will be a really incredible adventure. Well, I neglected to consider the fact that there were people over there trying to kill us. And so that changed the whole perspective. And of course, I was there 7.5 months, and we ran into a North Vietnamese regiment. We were outnumbered 3-1. Our commander behind us said, "Fix bayonets." And when you hear that, oh, this is bad news. They don't ever tell you to fix bayonets. So we went in at them. Bullets were snapping by my head. Snap, snap. Friends of mine were falling in front of me, and there were people up in front of me, and I opened fire on them and brought them down. And after this went on for maybe a half an hour, a mortar round landed at my left foot, blew me up in the air, and knocked me down. And when it did, I was on my back and knocked the wind out of me. I remember I knew I was in trouble because I tried to get up and I could see my left foot was dangling. So I was bleeding. So I grabbed the earth with both hands, holding as if to hold onto the earth, I would stay with it. I'd stay alive. And I held on and held on. And then I saw a white, like a light above my head, a white light. And as long as I focused on that light, I continued to stay conscious and alive. Eventually, they got
Wow.
us out. Yeah. A nurse told me at the Oakland Naval Hospital months later when I explained that to her, and she said to me, she said, "What that white light?" She said, "What you saw was faith." She
Mm,
said, "It was faith."
mm.
Wow,
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Anyway, the doctor told me at the Naval Hospital, I mean, when I got onto the hospital ship, he said, "Corporal Bliss, I don't think we're going to be able to save you." He said, "But I'll try."
Mm.
And I said, "Doc, do your best." Well, I fooled them all because here I am talking to Miss Edna at the moment.
And here you are. It's incredible, and even more so as you think about the fact, like you said, you were an 18-year-old kid. What did
Yeah.
you know? Like, and to be, and of course, and all of the young men like you, specifically with that war, which was, of course, unlike any other since then. And of course, when you came home collectively as veterans, the treatment of Vietnam veterans is just it makes me want to cry anytime. My husband, of course, will talk about this because he, loves the
Yes.
history and all of that. And I almost have to stop. I'm like, I can't even hear it because it just breaks my heart to know,
Yes, absolutely.
that
If we weren't
these
abused, most of us were
right.
abused. But
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't that, if that weren't the situation, we were greeted with apathy. I came home
Yeah.
to Hastings on Hudson, and even my own friends just didn't bother with me. The townspeople that knew me, because of my sport, playing sports and everything for the town, they were just apathetic. And it
Mm.
was very, very difficult to deal with. I remember years later in 1975, the New York City decided to throw a parade for the Vietnam veterans. And a friend of mine said to me, "Come on, Bob, they're throwing us a parade." I said, "You go." I said, "I'm not
Mm.
going." It was too late, too late.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It
yeah,
left, I know that it left a lot of bitterness,
yeah.
and hurt
A friend of mine
for,
came home and killed himself. He shot himself.
mm,
It was it was the
yeah.
most all we were doing, Edna, was what our fathers had done before us, serving our country with honor,
Mm-hmm.
like my dad did in Germany.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we came home to that, to the uh it was horrible.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to dwell
It
on
is.
that.
No, I understand it as much as my capacity for understanding that, and of course I didn't experience it, so I could never understand it on that level. But
Hmm.
my heart goes out to you and every Vietnam veteran who experienced that. It's just unforgivable and such a black mark and disgrace on our history, really.
Yes,
Um,
but
there
our
was
honor
a
was intact. We kept our honor
Yes.
was intact and we survived it. I mean,
Absolutely.
honor is a very important thing, as you would know, and I'm sure your husband knows, and mine's intact.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And rightly so. Deservedly so. Definitely. Now, I have in
Thank
my
you.
notes here that there was a pivotal day, September 21st, 1967.
Hmm.
Um, what what is it that happened on that day that affected you, that affected your
Well,
life?
that was the day I was nearly killed in Vietnam.
That,
That was the
yeah.
date. It
I
resonates. It
suspected
stays
that
with
it
me.
was. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that obviously that was such a life-changing moment for you. And again, at 18 years old um, to one, face your mortality. I mean, you grow up almost instantly, right? Like you
Oh yeah.
just and I'm sure your previous life experiences, you were probably an adult at a very young age, right?
Oh yeah. You grew up. Well, I grew up as a child, basically. But I mean, like I say to friends of mine, in fact, I wrote a poem about it. I didn't go to Vietnam to die. I went there to live.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and and you do. You live. That's where you live more in combat than any other situation in life, because life is so close and so real and so desperate and elusive sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I was
Yeah.
very
Do you
fortunate
think?
to have survived.
Oh,
Pardon me? I'm sorry.
absolutely. I'm sorry. No, no,
Yeah.
no. I cut you off. Do
No.
you think your experience as a Vietnam veteran and of course a decorated Marine, your service, all of that, the challenges, all of these things, how would you say that they shaped the themes and the tone of your poetry?
Well, all of that, my early life and the Marines, especially Vietnam, just it gave me a fine tuned uh, perception of what life is, what life can be, and what it can't be. And from that perspective, um, and years afterwards, I was able to turn it into words
Mm.
and the emotional impact as well. Those emotions, turning those emotions into words too. And, you know, and, you know, I like to say that I survived Vietnam because it was fatal. It was fate. And I believe in fate. And I think I was fated to become an American poet. And that's what I try to do every day.
Yeah, and I would imagine you give voice to so many other veterans who aren't able to articulate that deep well of emotions, and they
Yeah.
can't put the words to it, whether they don't know how or it's just too much for them speak on, but they feel the need to be understood. And I would imagine that reading your words and seeing their feelings and their thoughts, because it's got to be, quite universal in some ways for all veterans who experience what you've experienced. It just
Yes.
must be so helpful to them. So just bless you for writing the things that other people feel. Really, right? I mean, that's what a
Yeah,
gift.
it's true. I mean, I send some of my poems, especially my Vietnam poems. I wrote a poem called "Were You There," that addresses the subject of Vietnam, not so much to veterans, but to the country and the world.
Mm.
And I sent that to several of my Vietnam buddies who survived. Um, and they write back with, you know, these comments that says, "Bob, you really hit it. You know, this is what I've thought about." But they're just grateful, and
Yeah.
I appreciate that, especially from my Vietnam brothers.
Hmm. Yeah, I bet. I bet. What a powerful gift to be able to give to anyone
I'm
who's experienced.
I feel blessed. I really do. I think I survived Vietnam to be where I am today and to be an American poet. I really do.
And
I
you
mean, I
also
like to call myself an American poet. I don't have that wide of an audience yet, but maybe someday.
listen, you are a published American poet. That makes you an American poet. That you are exactly who you say you are, right?
Yeah.
I think
Thank
it's
you.
wonderful. And
I do
and
too.
again, and I bring back that contrast of, being in kind of immersed in something that is, just filled with a lot of ugliness and darkness and pain and all of those
Yeah.
things. And then to balance it out with the beauty of the Catskills for, the perfect
Yes.
example. So obviously your
It's
work is
incredible.
vividly inspired by the Catskill Mountains and
Yeah.
often written while with your dog, Maud. Is that right? Is that I have that? That's what I have here. Is that right?
Well, yes. Unfortunately, Maudie left me about a year ago. She had a stroke. She was 14 years old. I got her.
Oh, I'm so
I
sorry.
rescued her. They were going to put her down as a puppy. I rescued her, and yeah, we went swimming together in Cooper Lake in Woodstock when she was a
Mm.
puppy, and she stayed with me all those years. And the most beautiful dog I've ever had. She was lovely. They
Oh,
put
she
her.
sounds amazing.
Yes, she's. They put her photograph in the book back here. I didn't even know I had photographs back here, but she she was mostly beagle, and the most beautiful dog I ever had.
Oh, she sounds amazing. And it's 14 years. You gave her an incredible life.
There she is.
Maud. Oh, she's so
Mm,
sweet. Oh, what a beauty. Oh, I am so sorry for the loss of Maud, but I'm so glad
mm.
that she enriched your life and you obviously enriched hers so much. I
Yes, we
love
were.
that.
Yes, she was beautiful. Now I have a cat that I found outdoors here. She was very hungry and had survived somehow the winter out here in the woods. And I brought her in, and now she's my companion. She's beautiful.
She adopted you.
Yes, she did. Literally.
I love
Yeah.
that. Yep. She's like,
She
"Oh,
taught me. She's what? I'm sorry.
no, I was going to say she adopted you. She's like, "Oh, this is my person now."
Yeah, absolutely. She taught me how to play fetch. She sits on my knee in the evening and watches television. She
Mm,
sleeps right next to me in bed, bats me in the nose in the morning when it's time for her to eat. The
that
most
is too
incredible cat.
cute.
Yeah, I
Oh,
love
I
cats. They're
love it.
lovely.
I like to think of things like, I like Maud sent you this cat. Maud was like, "Oh, we don't want him to be lonely. Like here's this cat
There
that's
you
going to
go.
keep you busy, right?" That's the way
Yes,
I like to
yes,
look at things. Just to
yes.
keep that connection going.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
I would love to know, like, what was it that drew you to the Catskills? Why there specifically, and why does that area call to you so much and influence your writing so much?
Well, my former wife and I were. when we first married, we rented a house in Tarrytown, New York. But one day she said, "Why don't we move up to Woodstock?" I didn't know. I mean, I'd heard of Woodstock, but I never went to the 1969 gathering. I was working. I wanted to, but I couldn't. But so we went up there, found a house. We got a realtor. We bought a house in Woodstock, and I just realized in the setting in the larger area, it was in the Catskill Park, and the mountains and the fresh air and the quiet of the whole area. It was so beautiful. And I just fell in love with it. And I've been up here ever since. And now I'm even further north in Highland, New York, but it's still where, as you can see behind me, this is beautiful here. We have meadows and oh, I love it. I just love the
Oh.
Catskills. I just learned to appreciate it. And when I was a kid, we lived in the woods there in Douglaston, Queens back then.
Mhm.
And besides, there's animals out here, and I'm a wildlife nut, and I support several wildlife causes. And we've had deer walk right up to the and look in the window here uh, in the lounge area when people are having uh, their wine in the evening or what have you. And I looked there one day, and there's a deer staring in the window at us. And I said, "Look, look!" Nobody gets excited except me.
I,
That's cool.
I listen, if I was there, I would get excited. I get excited over every little creature that comes around. I would be like,
Me
I
too.
would be right
Oh
there
yeah.
with you. And I'm
Oh
always
yeah.
amazed when people aren't amazed.
I
Like,
I, I don't get it. You
I
know.
don't either.
You
I
know.
don't
I
either.
I
Like,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I
no,
was just going to
yeah.
say I like animals more than I like people in some to some degree. Of course,
Yes,
depending on the people. But I mean,
of
yeah, the
course.
chipmunks. I feed the chipmunks in the winter. I feed the
Hmm.
birds out here. You know, I had a crow come down, land on this table, landed on the table, and came over to my coffee drink. And I was taking pictures the whole time, and it pulled the straw out of the coffee drink.
Oh,
And
come
I was taking
on.
photographs, and I said, "What's going on here?" Now, they're very intelligent birds, which I wasn't aware of
Yes.
until I read about them later. But it pulled the straw out and it dropped the straw, and then it grabbed the lid of the drink, and pulled the drink over, and some of the coffee spilled onto the on the table. And it took a little sip, shook its head like as if to say, "Eh," and then "Adios, mis amigos," and it was gone. But it was one of those things that you just never forget.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I'm
Oh,
obsessed with crows. Like that's my life's dream right now
and
to
really?
just attract crows to my home and to have them as outdoor, not pets, but outdoor companions that will
Oh
just,
yeah,
yes.
they're up here in
So
the trees. I'll have to
love,
send you the
love,
photo.
love
I'll send you the photos, the sequence of photos at some
Please
point.
do. I'm so
Yeah.
envious right now. Oh, I wanna
Oh.
see, I wanna jump out of my studio and come literally hang out with you right
Come on,
there.
another
Thank you.
coffee, please.
I know, right? One more coffee, please.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's nice. Nature is everything to me. A lot of my poetry is about nature. I wrote a lot of nature poems. In fact, I'm writing one this morning. Love poetry, nature poetry, a little bit of fantasy poetry, where I go back through the Middle Ages and create some strange story and other things. But yeah, nature poetry is predominant throughout my writing as well.
I love that you have such a broad range of interests, though, different aspects or areas of poetry that you can go into. The versatility there is so impressive. I think maybe you're going to be my inspiration to improve on
Hmm.
that, to try it at least.
Yes, take a walk in the
Oh,
woods, and your
yes.
senses will start talking to you, and all of a sudden something will resonate, and you'll go back and you'll start to write. That's what I find. Nature opens up all my senses.
Hmm.
Uh, attacks my emotions.
So we did speak very early on about some of the other things you do, photography and all of those things. I would love to get a little bit more into all of that because you wear a lot of hats. Like we said, poet, photographer, editor, philanthropist. Tell me a little bit, if you will, just about each thing and how. I mean, let's start with photographer. Photography. How did you get into that?
I've been doing that for years. I've got several cameras. I don't know. I think I began to realize that it seemed to me that poetry um, and photography sort of went hand in hand because they both explain the world around you, what you're looking at, what you're thinking. You know, a photograph tells you who you are, really, in some ways. I mean, it's not, anybody can take a picture of a wall, but if you get out there and you start photographing nature and wildlife and things like that, I don't know, they just seem to work with me uh, sort of in tandem. And I've just been doing it for years now, and I enjoy it. I always say that, photography is easy, poetry is not.
Yeah, I definitely, you already know I agree with you on that. I'm not, and I have to admit, I'm not really a good photographer either. So I cannot put that hat on for sure. Editing, I can. Are you talking more about like book editing or like video graphic editing, stuff like that? What kind of editing do you like to do?
Well, I've done darkroom work with black and white. I can do that. I can edit something that somebody has written if they like me to. Um, I, I I wasn't a very good student, but yet um, after Vietnam, I really got into reading, and I kind of like Abe Lincoln. I'm sort of self-taught, and so I learned a lot. I did a lot of reading of the early poets, Keats and Shelley, Lord Byron, T.S. Eliot, et cetera, Robert Frost. But I found them very, very difficult. Very, they were difficult to read, not to read, but to, I don't know, their language was hard to me
Hmm.
in a lot of ways. Not all of them. But I mean, I needed to soften that language up some. So I became, I think I've reached a point where I have my own style now. I write in stanzas and I do rhyme scheme.
Mm.
I don't know. I don't think I answered your question though. I'm sorry.
No, you really did. No, you did. You did. We just evolved into another part of it. That's all.
Yeah.
Which made me think of though, do you have any favorite poets that have inspired you?
Well, I have liked Lord Byron. I like some of Frost. Um,
Hmm.
I like Getty, San Francisco beat poet from the 50s. Not only was he interesting, but he also wrote poetry with a sense of humor.
Hmm.
I like Getty and a couple of others. But as far as it was more like reading, though. I mean, I can't say they really influenced my writing,
Hmm.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm sort of I'm well, like any writer, you're an individual,
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Yeah, I agree with you. I find, and I'm just wondering if you find this too, in your writing. I find that when I'm writing, that I don't want to be reading anything else in the genre that I'm writing in, only because I'm afraid that it'll influence me. Do you kind of like when you're in your writing mode, do you kind of turn all of that stuff off and avoid reading other things so that it doesn't kind of seep in?
Well, it doesn't bother me anymore because it did initially. I could have find some roadblocks there reading other poets, but now I don't really read any other poets. What I read is history, especially
Mm.
American history. Well, I've also written oh a couple of poems about the Revolutionary War because I had one ancestor who was at um, Concord and at the Battle of Saratoga, where he was saved a lot of lives. Um, His name was Samuel Bliss, a great grandfather of mine. So that had a little bearing on, I mean, the historical aspect of my family. But other than that, it's more like I don't know. My mother was a piano player. She used to write music and things like that. Maybe it's maybe it's a continuation of that. My twin brother Donald is not is not he doesn't do those things. Don't get me wrong, I love him dearly, and but I don't know, this poetry thing just grabbed me and just wouldn't let me go, and it's kind of like, you're compelled. I
Oh,
compel you to
yes.
write. You will write.
That is, and you know what? To everyone who is a writer, author, they're all nodding right now because that's so true. It does. You
Yeah,
are compelled. Once you start,
as you
you
know.
can't stop. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So yeah,
Oh, I was
I
gonna.
can go ahead.
Yeah. No, no, you're right. You know what? You know this as well as I do, and as other writers. Yes, I'm also starting to write my biography because I have led an interesting life in some degrees, especially my early childhood. When I tell those stories, wow, that'll sell the book
Hmm.
alone.
Yeah,
And
no
then the
kidding.
progression through Andrus, which was like arriving, I thought I had died and gone to heaven when we got there. I went down to the barn the first day I was there after I put my clothing and things in our dorm room in Foster Hall, we had English house parents. We had an English cook. There were only 20 of us in the cottage, a cottage, big stone building. I heard the cows. I went down to the barn and I went down to the end and I was looking at these beautiful dairy cows and there was a calf in there. I stuck my hand in to pet the calf and she started to suck on my fingers. And
Oh,
then I heard this loud screeching from behind the barn. I said, "What's that?" I ran out, went around the back. Let's say I was 13 years old, ran around the back of the barn and there were two beautiful displaying peacocks. And I remember looking skyward and said, "Thank you, God. Thank you."
yeah,
I knew,
absolutely.
and I felt safe for the first time in my life.
Mm.
So
I
it was,
I was so hoping that you would say that you are working on an autobiography or a
yeah.
memoir. I was
Oh,
so
yes.
hoping you would say that, and I'm so glad to hear it because that was one of the first things that I thought at reading your bio here in preparation for this, and then talking to you and listening to your life experiences. I'm like, this needs to be all. This is a story that needs to be told and needs to be
Thank
read.
you.
So I'm so
Thank you.
excited that you're working
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
And like you kind of answered multiple questions in one shot because I was going to ask you,
Oh, yeah.
what's next for you? Like, what are you working on next? I'm assuming that's a big part of. Are you like
Yeah.
typical authors and working on multiple projects at once?
No, I can't do that.
Okay.
If I'm writing poetry, I'm writing poetry. If I'm writing something else, it's something else. But I did write excuse me, several years ago, I sent notices to my Vietnam friends who were with me in Vietnam who survived, and I asked them to send me their reminiscences and their
Mm.
remembrances of Vietnam. So I've got a folder full of their information, which is going to be a rather extensive chapter or more on my Vietnam experiences. So that's pretty much there. It's just a matter of writing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got my
Wow.
first laptop, so that's going to make a difference. I want to sit outside and write my story.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's going to be amazing. Well, then you have to promise to come back in and tell us about that when it's done. So that's very
Oh,
exciting.
sure.
Robert,
That's
tell me what our last kind of final message for our readers and our listeners and viewers. What would you hope for people to take away from reading your poetry? Is there something you'd like them to just walk away with?
well, I would say that when you're feeling at your worst, and you're feeling down and you think that you can't go on any further, remember that life is beautiful and it's more beautiful every day, and stay with it. And if you have things that are important to you, try to write them down so that your family will have something that they can remember later on. Keep those, it's important. And I wish my family had done that too. And I'm doing it now with writing poetry. And for anybody that has any aspiration at all as to write poetry, put a few words on paper, see where it goes. Doesn't hurt.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so true. That is like the first step. Anytime somebody asks, like, how do I become an author? Well, you start writing.
Yep,
You
that's all
write.
you got to do. Put a few
That's
words
all
down.
you got to do. Yes, that is the first hurdle to get over. Everything else comes after that, but just start writing. Robert, that is all of your advice there was spot on and so wonderful and inspiring for somebody who's just wondering where and how and why and just trying to get up the courage to do that. And I think you just gave it to them. So that's
I
a
hope so.
beautiful thing. You are a man of many gifts that you just keep giving to others. And I think the beautiful thing, it was such an honor to meet you and talk with you and get to have this opportunity to share your story and your work. So again, I thank you very much.
I thank you for your time, and your questions were spot on. And I want to thank you for your time, and I enjoyed it.
Thank you. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. All right, my friends, we will see you guys in the next episode. And the links to Buy Robert's books will be in our show notes. So be sure to check them out. And we will see you in the next episode. Take care.